Welcome to Beyond Sunday, a podcast designed for the leadership beyond Sunday worship. Honest conversations for the pastors, staff, and lay leaders who know the most important work of the local church happens between weekends. From Church for Today, here are your hosts, Dr. Rupert Loyd and Dr. Gia Tatone.
Hello again, and welcome back to our podcast, Beyond Sunday, a leadership podcast from Church for Today. I am your co-host, Dr. Gia Tatone, and with me is our co-host, Dr. Rupert Loyd.
Hi, Gia. How you doing today?
Hi, Rupert. I'm doing great. Thanks. Great to see you. We had a really robust discussion during episode 4, didn't we?
We did. It was not bad at all, I thought.
Yeah. So we talked about going beyond the pew and how to connect to the community. And so we're really starting to take this watch apart. We talked about how we are a little bit different as a podcast. There are some other podcasts out there that have a lot of conversations regarding the gospel and spirituality and the message. And while we definitely encompass all of that as well, we are talking a little bit more about having a presence in the community and getting connected to community and taking the things that we learn from within our churches outside into the world and out to the world, I guess I should say. So we talked a little bit about the real framework, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which I thought was great. That came from an article that you had written where we talked about reimagining and engaging and awakening and leading and doing all those things, the real things that are designed specifically to help the church move beyond Sunday and into the community, which is where people live, 7 days a week.
Right. So, starting with our own zip code, right? I think all too often we get lost on the starting place. Where is a place to start? And in season 2, we're going to talk all about those strategies. We're going to talk about models. We're going to talk about techniques for getting beyond Sunday. What happens between the bookends of the weekend? What happens during Monday's reality? We got all this spiritual nourishment on Sunday morning during the message. And now how do we put that into application? How can the church put that in application? What does this mean for church leadership, for staff, for other church leaders and congregation members like myself? So 2 strategies that we are going to be talking about is a little bit about how we can connect and develop partnerships. What does it look like to connect to maybe a nonprofit or a business? There's a lot of division and separation between these entities in our community. So how could we even make that possible? Like, what would that look like, Rupert?
The idea of a church connecting with a business partnership is, I think is really important. I think it has a lot of potential. Also, there are some things that need to be worked through by the church. Many folks feel that any kind of business is secular, and therefore we don't want secular things in our church. We want sacred things in our church. We want to run our church as a church and not as a business. Can't tell you how many meetings and discussions I've had like that in the church. And I appreciate the idea of the church being a sacred place, a place where we can come and worship and feel safe, a sanctuary, if you will. Very, very important to do that. But that does not necessarily mean that the business procedures that people have discovered about how organizations work, how organizations advertise, that kind of thing, those are not necessarily bad things. We need to recognize there's a scriptural, marvelous scriptural example of when Moses was leading out the Israelites from Egypt. Do you know what he told them on the way out? They were told, God told them through Moses, to spoil the Egyptians, that is to take the gems and the jewels and some of the things as they're leaving. God had a reason for doing that. It was partly justice. But the idea for us today is that we need to spoil the Egyptians as well. We need to take what is good from what we see happening with mission-aligned businesses and see if there are some things there that we can use to actually help us in our complete the mission of the church that Jesus has given to us, which is to make disciples of all the world. So when we've been talking about getting out of the church, getting out of the 4 walls. And one of those ways of doing that is to find people that are already in your congregation who are working in a mission aligned type of business. That is, where the mission lines up more or less with the values of what the church is doing. What would happen if you could actually figure out a way to make the two come together as a partnership to provide good things for the business and good things for the church in the community itself? That kind of non-profit church partnership type of deal, I think, could end up with volunteers and a community presence. It could help, but there needs to be some serious discussion in the church about what would be required.
So you said a lot of great things there that was just packed with information. And I think some of the challenges that we deal with as a church is the taboo of business. Of course, there's that separation of church and state. We don't want to become secular, right? We don't want to lose our values, our belief systems, but yet
Right.
we want to connect, and we struggle with how to do that. And so while I discussed last episode about the real framework, about reimagining the presence, that first dimension of the framework, reimagining, I think, is key here. And the second dimension, to what you just said, engaging the members, is key, because in our church communities are individuals who are considered Christian business owners, Christian nonprofit leaders. And sometimes the best kept secret is how, as a Christian business owner or a Christian nonprofit leader, I can connect to my church community, and how my church community can connect to this nonprofit or business. So last episode, I gave the example of the coffee shop and how a Bible study started within that coffee shop. Now, what I don't know, Rupert, is I don't know if that business was owned by Christian leaders. I don't know if those who were doing the Bible study there, it's a third space. I know these coffee shops welcome individuals like me and you to come in and lead or participate in a Bible study, bringing in, it's up to like 100 or a couple hundred participants now. They got, like, I think in a backyard or some parking lot of the business. They aren't chasing away that business. It's blessing that business. That business is getting blessed with a lot of
Yep.
coffee being sold. So
Right.
whether that owner of that business is happy to have that partnership and that connection for the sake of business, or whether it's owned by Christian leaders who welcome their church to have the Bible study in their space, is yet to be known or investigated. But at the same time, I think that is a excellent model on how we should maybe consider the possibilities for connecting to church or nonprofit organizations, to businesses and nonprofit organizations as a church.
I led a men's group for a number of years. We met in the back room of a restaurant, and the idea when we would meet together was to have a great meal, pray, and then read the Bible. We didn't just do it in that back room. Our wait staff was always there inside with us there. We prayed with the wait staff quite frequently. And we were there because we were faithful and we were generous. Generosity is important also if you're going to do this, because you want good things to happen for the business. But what gradually happened that you couldn't even foresee is about 7 to 8 months into this, we had people coming to coming to me, asking me to do a funeral, asking me to do a wedding, that kind of stuff, because we were the only church contact that people knew. The owners would come, they would talk to me, they would talk to one of the other folks that were in on our Bible study, and we were open and ready for God's Spirit to use us in the community, because we were in that third space, because we were there. It wasn't on a Sunday. It was actually, I think we were meeting on a Thursday or a Wednesday night. Because we were there and available, God was able to use those circumstances that the people were going through, and we were there, and they would come to us and ask for that kind of help. So that kind of partnership, I think, is it's informal, and I think that we could even begin to work with other community-based organizations that also have a desire for the neighborhood that we're in, the zip code that we're in. I know that we did that a number of times with different food pantries, with different other organizations that we shared values with. They weren't necessarily Christian, but uh, uh, they were interested in what we were interested in, which was helping people in our community.
Rupert, these conversations are so important because we talk about going out into the world. We talk about salvation. We talk about discipleship. Yet at the same time, we talk about, the divisions that are out there between businesses and the church or church and state. And, these conversations are so important. We're not having these conversations enough about what this would look like. I mean, our
Yes.
podcast is really experimental. I mean, we are taking an examination that's 2 PhDs who have expertise in community leadership and church and ministry, and talking about what has been working, what's not what hasn't worked. What are the appropriate ways to do this, and also guarding against burnout. We don't want church leadership and staff feeling burned out. We don't want congregation members feeling frustrated and start having that silent quitting where, I don't think I want to do this anymore. We want to have sustainability. We want to have lasting relationships and initiatives. Also, the community starts to look at the church as a leader, as a light on the hill. It's the lighthouse effect, right? They
Yes.
see that light on the hill that is a safe place, a trustworthy space. It's good to their community. It's good to them. I think the last podcast I quoted a Winston Churchill quote about a community will take on that identity. There is also a book that I referred to in my last church doctor report that came out on June 4th about Is Your City Sick? And, and examining about what an impact we can have on communities to take it from that place of unhealthiness to a place of being healthy.
Yeah. It begins with having these conversations among the leadership and among the congregation. The leadership of the church, the pastor and the leaders, ought to be able to have this, recognize that this is the kind of thinking that Jesus would want the church to do, because we have a mission. That is the purpose of the church, which is to get out and to share the gospel. So what's that going to look like? And so it begins with conversations inside the church, among the leadership, among the congregation. A lot of prayer, gotta have prayer, gotta start with prayer.
Absolutely.
And then ask, what businesses or community services does your neighborhood actually need? What's there? As you look at it, what do you see?
Yeah.
You and I, we were talking about our dissertations the other day. Both of us did interviews, and one of the things that you have to do when you're doing a dissertation is you've got to make sure that the questions that you're asking are the right questions and they're going to get the right responses. And in academia, that's called a pilot study. That's where you send it out there and you find out that the question that you're asking is getting people are responding to it the way you want them to, and they're not thinking it's about UFOs or something along those lines. What do you think about doing a pilot, Gia, for
Yeah.
the church?
Pop-ups, pilots, um, just having a seasonal, like it's fall or winter, our summer initiative. We want to, if this is going to happen in the bookends between the weekends, 6 days a week, the other 6 days, it starts small. What is that stone thrown into the water? How is it rippling out between pilot tests, pop-ups, congregation members who are ready to begin building those relational aspects, as well as having some entrepreneurial and innovation edge where they are growing and maturing in Christ and ready for that next step, as we talk about regarding putting discipleship into action. All of that is a great place to start and helps with that discipleship pathway. So
Yeah.
with that being said, Rupert, what do you think? Is this a good place to take a break for a minute?
Good time to take a break. Good time to take a break.
All right, let's do that, and we'll see you all when we come back.
Leadership is heavy. The decisions, the people, the weight of what is next. You are not meant to carry it alone. Church for Today coaching gives pastors and ministry leaders a trusted guide for the leadership work that matters most. One-on-one, team-based, built for the established church. If you're ready to lead with greater clarity and confidence, start at churchfortoday.com. Church for Today, where kingdom leaders go to lead what comes next.
Welcome back, everyone. Hey, Gia, you just finished a Church Doctor report, which, by the way, people can find at churchdoctor.org. You just finished a Church Doctor report called a community connected church and how that can help. Once again, you're good at this. You put together an acronym type of thing. I think you called it, this time it was very deep. You used a lot of your PhD thinking. I think you called it the ABCs of connecting churches, as I recall. Could you share a little bit about that, since we've been talking about how churches should connect with the community?
Yes. So my report came out just this summer on June 4th. So it's not something I wrote a year, months, or years ago. It just is fresh off the press this summer, and it explores the ABCs of being a community connected church. And the ABCs stand for assess what is actionable, be present beyond Sunday and the Bible study, and listen to the people and places, and connect with others and build relationships.
Excellent. So let's talk about A, assess what is actionable. What do you mean by assess what is actionable? What are you talking about?
The first half of this podcast, we talked about nonprofits and business and who in the congregation might, is a Christian business leader or nonprofit leader that, is interested in connecting the church to their organization, and as well as talking to congregation members who are ready for that, who have a missional, innovational approach to an idea they have and all that good stuff, right? In this case, this is more about creating welcoming spaces for the community to utilize on the church being a third place, a third space, such as maybe for community meetings or after school initiatives or voting. So now, while we are looking to get beyond the pew in the community, it's also ways to invite the community to our third space as a church, and to build the bridge between going beyond Sunday into the community and being a
Sure.
bridge for the community come. So it's a bridge vision, I guess you can say, that we
Okay,
can both.
being a good steward of the building, of the materials that God has already given you, and reimagining something beyond the church building being just a worship service or a place for Bible study. You had shared in your article a little bit more about the different kinds of community events that you could run out of the church itself, and that will have people actually coming to the church building, getting to know the church. And, as that occurs, they begin to think that, hey, that's my church, because I know that church. I go there. I know what it's about and everything. So that was some good ideas, I thought.
We put out a lot of information in advertisement. And Rupert, maybe you could speak into this a little bit about how we advertise our church, come to our services on social media or signs posted outside. What about, though, while we're busy doing that, surveying the community to get their input and ideas?
Yeah, I think so. When the church can
how does that work?
Yeah, when people begin to get the idea that the church is interested in the community and interested in, many people are also interested in the community. They may have no church background or religious understanding at all, but they're interested in helping out people in the community. When they see that the church is also interested in that, then they too begin to thinking, well, maybe there is a partnership, or maybe there is something that we have in common. And I think that kind of thing becomes very important. It becomes a part of the ethos of the community itself. Of course, we want to consult with, what the local church is doing, because we already know the local church is interested and they've already helped us out in other ways. And people begin thinking about that. And so there are workshops or classes, or teaching English as a second language, or technology classes. There are so many things that we could utilize a church building for as a part of the community, if we think about it, if we're praying about it, if we're listening to how the Holy Spirit is leading on that.
You know,
So go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, it kind of makes me think of, you referred to like, okay, we are doctors in leadership and leaders of community and churches, but our congregation members, as well as even our church staff, have some amazing talents and skills that can be offered not only to the church at large, but the community at large, such as,
Yes.
I know after the pandemic, there were some individuals within congregations who were counselors, be it in schools or in various hospitals or um, health and medical communities, that were offering some services to help people to deal with the impact
Yes.
and effects of the pandemic. That's a great way to use the church as a third space to help with health and wellness, like
Yes.
mental health.
Excellent. And that kind of sort of rolls into your second part when be present beyond Sunday and the Bible study and listen to people and have your own our own congregation, our own congregation members understand what the community is, what's needed in our own community. Could you say a little bit more about that and how we are supposed to be present beyond Sunday? What you meant by that?
That's a really good question. I'll be talking about this in a future podcast during season 2. But one time, I went on a mission trip to help with the cleanup for Hurricane Katrina. And I was looking for support to help cover the finance and expenses that it was going to cost me to go on that trip. And I had a family member that has been very supportive over the years for various initiatives and things that I would do. And I thought, well, that's the first person who's going to support me, right? And that person actually did not support me. And they wrote me a letter saying, it would behoove you, if you want to help out a struggling community, start in your own backyard. And they said to me that there's FEMA and all kinds of organizations and the Red Cross that's helping out with this, with the cleanup. They said, where are you needed in your own backyard? I really didn't know where to go, what to do. So what I did was I went to a coffee shop and I thought, well, I can invest my business here. So instead of going to a restaurant or here or there to have that cup of coffee, I went to a mom and pop business and I just started having coffee there. And then I started having conversations. And then I started sharing about what church I was a member of and some of the initiatives that we offer as a third space. And it turns out that they had kids that were in high school and they really weren't connected. And their children started coming to that church and got involved really fast. And so it just snowballed. And so that's, one example of several I know we'll be talking about how to just be present and getting beyond just, getting into the community by having just ourselves being present in these places.
I think it's really important for the leadership to also be thinking about this, not only individually. I've always thought that, as a pastor needs to be in the community, but as a church, how can we do that? What we used to actually have a Sunday school in a trampoline park. We had helped the trampoline park come into the space. We owned the our church at the time had actually owned the entire complex. So we helped them get in. And so we were a partnership on that. They loved the idea that we would have, they had a space set aside for our Sunday school. Our Sunday school kids absolutely loved having Sunday school in a trampoline park because they had a terrific type of deal. And that partnership grew. That trampoline park had a staff of maybe 15, 20 people. And we had a serious ministry as a church to each and one of those staff people and their families. It just begins to snowball. So it's really important to understand what it means to be present in the community. Assess where you can be. It's not always just about inviting people to come to church on Sunday morning. So,
And in both of those examples, that takes us to the third one, right?
yes,
Connect.
yes.
You got to make that connection, build the relationships, have those conversations. And that's what strengthens those partnerships, don't you think?
That can be scary too. A number of us are not naturally extroverts. We're introverts but the Lord has called us to talk about him. And that's what we want to do. We want to talk about what he's been doing in our life. And we don't have to share marvelous, incredible turnaround stories. We just need to share our life with somebody in an average conversation. And I think when we do that, wonderful things can happen.
And I love how you mentioned extroversion, because that's going to correlate to a lot of our conversations regarding leadership and how to get past some of the personal challenges we go through. Those who know me, I'm married to an introvert. And so he's not going to sit there and start chit-chatting. Obviously, that would be me, right? And so sometimes when, we go by ourselves is one thing, and that's an option, but also going together and going with a friend or a loved one who helps us carry that load. Think of the oxen in the field, right? When one gets tired, the other one does the pulling, and that might be, something more to talk about. So I think this is a really great place to start, to stop and to start, but also stop and continue on for season 2. We'll be starting season 2. So
sounds good. Sounds good.
So if this resonated with you, subscribe and share the podcast and join us as we are continuing to explore what it means to live and lead beyond Sunday.
Thanks for listening to Beyond Sunday. If today's conversation surfaced something your leadership team needs to work through, you don't have to figure it out alone. Church for Today helps established churches discover, design, and deploy their next season of mission with coaching, consulting, and resources built for leadership teams like yours. Visit churchfortoday.com for more information.